He did. He when I first met him, he was with Mackie and Alvarez.
Sorry,
and then,
who?
Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson, okay.
And then he was with Ampeg forever.
Okay.
And then he was EMG forever.
Okay.
And then he's been with Dunlop now for a couple of years, and he's so good at his job, man. He's just really a good people person. But now what he wants to do more than anything is teach yoga. So he does, like when we were at NAM this year, every morning he would teach yoga, and there was like 9 of us in the basement of the Hilton. Like,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's funny, like we were talking about connecting to yourself in a way other than just intellectualizing everything. And he's another example of somebody who's working in that direction.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about like kind of like how you had a sense of maybe like compassion or being able to relate to people more when you went through like physical pain through exercising.
Yeah.
For me, I actually started training and I felt like maybe when I was 23, 24, like 4 years ago, and I was still like pretty like a bit of an asshole then. Then the company grew really fast and I just kind of like got overwhelmed with work and working 18-hour days, 16-hour days for forever and going through really dark times and I had like a pretty bad depression actually for like a year, and then that was when it hit me actually, because until then I always believed that depression is just like if you're mentally weak, that, or if you don't have what it takes. So I had this kind of like really like calloused and really like selfish way of and short-sighted version of relating to others.
It's fun.
Yeah, sorry, no.
It's funny you say that too, because I realized recently I was doing an interview the other day, and they're like, "Oh, you have 30 records," and they're like, "Where does that productivity come from?" And I said, honestly, I think up to this point, it came from a fear of stopping, because when I quit drinking or doing drugs or anything, it's like that same addictive mechanism just migrated, and it became something that if I put in 18-hour days, in my mind the work was of such significance that it warranted that amount of effort, and I could avoid having to think about deaths in the family or problems with my kids' school or relationship problems or whatever. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I hit a wall, I think, where the workload became such that I had to stand back and say, why are you doing this, man? Like, you don't enjoy this. Like, you started doing this because it was an avenue for you to express yourself emotionally, and now you're at a point where you resent it. So I pulled it back and I started going on vacation, and then, exercise and meditation and just all this sort of thing. And then all of a sudden I found like, oh, that's the reason why we're doing this. And so now it's like I've got all this music on deck, but it's funny because it's such a different procedure now. I'm like, nah, I'll start it when I feel like starting it, as opposed to starting it out of like the compulsion to work, to subconsciously avoid thinking about shit. It's now like, well, when it's ready, I'll know, and then I'll invest the energy, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that yesterday, because yesterday I did like an 18-hour day. Like, no, actually it was for like 16 hours. Just I took a couple hours off to go out for dinner with my wife and some friends. But then I went back home and, I started work from 9 a.m. and then emails till 1:30 midnight. And I was thinking like, same question, why? And then I realized that sometimes like the void of having nothing to do, but think and ponder about things, it's like it can be a scary thing, especially when you're used to always like be moving and doing a lot of things.
Devil's advocate though, we're very fortunate to have jobs that we love.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of times I would wrongly give myself shit for working 18-hour days, because among the thoughts of, okay, well, I'm compensating for not wanting to think, among that, I somewhere lost the fact I was like, yeah, I got a fucking great job. Yeah. And I love doing this. So I think it's like a fine line, the days where you're working long because you don't want to think, versus I'm working long because I got a great job. Yeah. And, this is bad.
Or sometimes like you're in the zone and you just want to keep going, and why stop? Like if good shit's coming out, like that. Totally. Most of the time you try to get something cool, and you get nothing, like just hit against the wall. Actually, but like something that you brought up earlier, which is kind of like being nicer to yourself, and also kind of like accept that you're human and you're not like this machine that can perfectly function predictably, consistently every time. 100%. Like one thing that I started doing was like actually taking time off on the weekends.
Totally.
I'll still like pick up the phone and call people or send a couple emails, but don't go to the office at 7 and or try to debug a circuit or you know.
Totally,
And,
dude.
and actually, like, I found that just having time to get bored and to sleep a lot on the weekend and hang out with my wife, go out for dinner, you know, just enjoy time off, really gives him like a lot more energy and creativity on the week. So Monday to Friday I can push like crazy, you know, 15, 16 hours, no problem. But I know on Saturday I'll probably like sleep 12 hours, you know, a good 10 hours and kind of like recover. It's like
think
doing
that's awesome.
intervals in the gym. It's like go super intense and then break, intense break.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome because a lot of people, I think, you know, it's the importance that I have put on my work was such that I used to never take time off because I thought, well, what I'm doing is too important.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if I stop, then it's going to suffer. But then there's this sense of like, well, you're going to die. And in 1,000 years, no one's going to give a fuck.
Exactly.
In 100 years, no one, possibly in
If you're
20
lucky,
years.
I mean, if
you're lucky.
if you're very lucky and you do things extremely well,
Yeah.
some people might know your name.
150
50,
years.
yeah.
If you're very lucky.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then when you think about the drop in the bucket that is our life, it's like, well, on this plane of existence, should we be beating our head against the wall for this, what amounts to a metaphor for where you're at? Like, you know, your work or my work. It's an extension of
Of you, of who you are, yeah.
So instead of beating your head against the wall to make you, why don't you just fucking, like you say, take a weekend and just like say, I'm just gonna be me for a while, and then when I get back to it, it'll probably be better. Right?
Yeah, exactly. You get a different perspective, but I think kind of like that, and you mentioned meditation because for me it was one of those things that before was like this woo bullshit thing, and then actually when I was going through this really like rough personal like dark time, then I was willing to try anything that would make it better. And actually mindfulness and meditations was one of the key things that helped me kind of like get over it and actually realize why those things happen. And I mean, meditation, just for people who have never done it, is just you sit down, you close your eyes. You don't even have to close your eyes apparently, and just focus on your breathing, and you can focus on how your body feels. And even if you start thinking, you observe your thoughts and just kind of like distance yourself from your experience a little bit. Just take a little bit of perspective, and dude, like 10 minutes a day of that shit can like really change your life. Yeah.
Totally.
Like I always tell my friends, like, do it for 10 days or a week. Do 10 minutes every day. You can do 10 minutes of anything for a week. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I was similar to you in that I thought meditation was something that was beyond me because I'm so scattered. But it was a while back that I read something that totally changed it for me, and it was somebody described it as anybody can do it. It's not, you don't have a predisposition to it, no matter how chaotic your mind is. He explained it in a way that just made sense for me. It's like the whole process of meditating is failing and starting again, failing and starting again, failing.
Dan Harris.
Again. Yeah.
10% heavier.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah.
It was like I saw it online, and I remember thinking at that point, oh, that's cool. Because
that's the point.
The point is the fact that I just lost it.
Yeah.
And starting again, and it's like, because up to that point I was like, oh, I lost it, I can't do it.
Yeah. You get frustrated and you get angry, and then
all of a sudden it's like somebody's like, no, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's a beautiful metaphor for life as well, and especially for creative work. It's like, because it's really easy when you start doing, and of course, if you're like very driven and you have these like expectations for yourself of what you expect yourself to be, and how you expect the outcome of things to be. Kind of like you have this bar that you've set, and the moment that you feel like, oh, I failed at reaching that standard, it's very easy to say like, oh, like I fucked it up, like, or I'm a failure, you know, I'm nothing.
Totally.
And I think that's one of the things that, at least for me, creates this super negative cycle of like, you know, like being like abusing myself through work or like through whatever. But and I think being able to accept that, you know, like these little failures are actually maybe a step forward, and you're maybe like working up to maybe not the path you chose or the path you would have liked to reach this standard, but just because you had a setback doesn't mean that you'll never get there. And I think for me, actually, like engineering and starting a company really taught me that, because, you know, like the first circuit I did wasn't like a B7K or an Alpha Omega or an amplifier, you know, it was shit. And actually, I always tell to people now when they're creating something, anything, I tell them everything you create the first time you do it, it sucks. And then a lot of the work you do is, I just call it unsucking. So maybe tomorrow it'll suck a little bit less, you know? And then after a while...
Sounds like marriage.
Yeah.
After a year, it doesn't suck at all.
It's the opposite of marriage. Yeah. Well, yeah. But really, like...
I get it. We're on the same page, man. And I mean, it's interesting, too, because... it's like we were talking about capitalism earlier, and it's like what underlines capitalism, to me at least, not being a real business-minded person, is that it's profoundly goal-oriented. Yeah. And I think that's flies in the face of enjoying it sometimes too, right? Like I recognize for myself that when I start a record, I've got this compulsion. I'm like, I have to do this. I got this vision. I have to make it happen. And I think that that's what I want to do. But in hindsight, the only part of it I really enjoy is that first blast of inspiration. The rest of it's fucking bullshit. It's like editing and file management and interpersonal micromanagement and hard drives and system failure and there's a sense of success to it, but
and deadlines and all that bullshit are like really.
However, without deadlines, I don't think I'd ever get anything.
Oh yeah,
done.
You have others like, dude, like I hope it's good enough now, but this is the best I can do right now, and
totally.
And then you have to kind of like just move on and.
Well, it's like the enemy? What? Perfect's the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and because I redid my studio recently, and I don't know how to do drywall or construction. I don't know how to make this.
I'm used to it.
But I looked up online.
Yeah.
And I found out how to do it.
Really? And you did it yourself?
Yeah, I did. And it turned out really poorly. But not it wasn't non-functional.
Yeah.
It did exactly what it needed to do.
You put a painting there and
that's what I had done on the first time. But then I redid it. But it still wasn't perfect. And because it wasn't perfect, I was unable to let it go. Yeah. And then I just didn't work. Every night I was going to sleep going, oh, that fucking seam's all fucked up. And I was going to put the thing on the roof, but it looks all fucked up. And then I was talking to my father about it, and he's just like, you gotta cut yourself some slack, because if you're such a perfectionist, it's like, this has been my feeling as well, is that I have a hard time giving people credit for the work that they are capable of at their best. Yeah. Because it's not
what you expect.
What I expect of myself.
Yeah, I know.
And so as a result of that, my employees were constantly like, I wasn't giving them like, good job, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was so busy saying, I would do that better. Therefore, you haven't done a good enough job. And they're thinking to themselves like, fuck, I'm not getting paid as much as you. Yeah. I'm not like sleeping. Like, you know what I mean? So that whole perfectionism thing, I think it's like OCD, man. It's like, it's like mental illness in a way.
In a way, it is a type of disease, I think. And we're talking earlier about addiction, and I really agree with you that, like, you can't ever get rid of addiction. In my opinion, you can only refocus it into something positive. So if you have a destructive addiction, drugs, drinking, porn, anything, anything that you just do compulsively to kind of like damage yourself, you can really refocus into something creative or exercising. Dude, working out is super addictive, but sure, like you might be annoying and you might be like watching your friends' diets and be an asshole for 6 months, but then they'll tell you, dude, you're being a dick about, like, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder or whatever.
Sure.
Then you kind of like down-regulate it, and then you have like a good habit or something where you can focus this really intense energy that otherwise could be destructive.
Exercise is one thing that it's almost a loophole, because it's like, it's productive while still being something that's you're able to be obsessive about, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny, we're even talking about watching your friends and all this sort of stuff. We were having a conversation about this the other day. It seems to be a lot of times anything that becomes like a fetish, like veganism, or exercise, or religion, or anything like this, it seems like it's really easy when you get into the headspace of seeing results for yourself, to be critical of others. But on some level, it's like I saw this translation of what somebody's Instagram picture is versus what it means. And what it was like a picture of a guy doing a yoga pose, and it was like finally able to do pigeon for 30 minutes equals I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Or finally meditated for 2 hours today, equals I'm better than you. You know, it just seems like, you know, and like when like veganism, I was vegetarian for many years, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm gonna try eating meat again. I want to see.
Yeah.
And it was funny to, like some of the people are just like so critical of me, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? This is my path, and I'm doing this because I was vegetarian for many years without questioning it.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna try it. So if and when I do end up back vegetarian, it's with the frame of mind of like, I know why. It's the same thing as people who never question, like if somebody has like a thought, maybe I'm gay.
Yeah.
But they never pursue that. And then they go through their life angry.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe just sort of spending some time, like intellectualizing it even. You don't have to have the experience.
Yeah.
And just be like, I'm not gay, or I am. And then you don't have to think about it anymore. That's the same thing where I'm at with vegetarianism. Yet, the amount of people that have like a vested interest in whether or not it's rooted in like fear of death or whatever, of telling somebody what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, nobody fucking knows, dude.
Yeah.
It's just like, I sort of ramble, but it's like, you know, I've got some friends that they run a band and they don't let their band drink. They don't let their band do drugs. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm like, just go for it. If you fuck up and you end up being like a liability, then we can't work together. But I wouldn't work with somebody that wasn't intelligent enough to know where their own line was.
Yeah.
You know? So I think people have to fail in the same way as you're talking about meditation.
Yeah.
But
on creation too, like that's the thing, like at least for me, then for me, like doing any product, the amount of suffering that you have to, like, it's suffering. Like people think that I exaggerate. Like no man, like it's suffering. Like
it's brutal.
Like it's brutal. And
totally.
And the best part is when you get the original idea and you see this kind of like this light in the world that didn't exist before, and in a way, that's kind of like pretty much all you have. Maybe after you've released it, people love it, then you might get like a second light. But there could be like a year or two between those two like highlights, and between that you're just eating shit sandwiches like day in and day out, pretty much.
Well, plus then you'll read the reviews and you get 100 positive reviews, and you only focus on the one that
the one asshole. Like
But I mean, I think that's also interesting too, because it's like the more successful I get, the more success I find, not only with this band but in all aspects of my life. The more I realize that, for me at least, I can't listen to praise or criticism, because it's the truth is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah. Well, they're both imposters in a way. Like they both could have like some truth to it. But for me, seeing both as, there's a Rudyard Kipling poem called "If," so it's amazing, and it talks about praise and criticism as being imposters, that you have to treat them just the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So the same way you would brush off unfair criticism, you should also brush off. I think you should always be nice. Like if someone thinks that whatever you did wasn't good, okay, it's fine, man. You don't need to like it.
Totally.
And if someone says, dude, you're like the most brilliant man ever, you're like, thank you, man. But you have to know, like, you're not, you know, like you're probably not. And for me, I always find, especially when the first wave of success came, before I had like a big failure to kind of like ground me and humble me, I found that I had a really hard time putting a line between believing in myself and believing in my own bullshit. And that was very interesting for me, kind of like trying to find the balance between like having faith and believe that we can accomplish something that's really ambitious and difficult, but at the same time don't believe that you're like invincible or indestructible.
Well, you're lucky that you failed, because it's like, you know,
super lucky.
I have a friend, I speak about this often, but I have a friend that hates to improvise. But my belief is because he's never failed. Like his band has always been successful.
Yeah.
Therefore, when it comes to like putting yourself on the line, the feeling of what it is to be humiliated in public is such a, it's like you build up this wall of success that you know, and in a lot of ways, I'm sure it's addictive too.
Yeah.
But like yourself and certainly me, dude, I fucking fail over and over and
Yeah,
over
yeah,
and
yeah.
over and over, and like publicly, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm still. I was talking to Beaver, but I was like, I'm still recovering from doing a bunch of mushrooms and dressing up like a mad scientist. You know, people are like, oh, you're crazy, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
It's just at that time, I made a decision that clearly appears like I was
Insanity, yeah.
insane, right?
Well, for that particular day, you might have been crazy, and
Sure.
and that's also the thing. It's kind of like, so in the same way that sometimes you can be a wonderful person, you can do something incredibly selfless and never tell anyone about it. At the same time, sometimes you can be like really unfair and ruthless asshole to people, and all of those things are not really who you really are. They're just kind of like
Yeah.
a slide of what you were at that particular time.
But it's still a choice.
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and I think it echoes in eternity. Like if you choose to be an asshole in that
Mhm.
moment, I think I don't think it's negated.
No, absolutely not. But you know what? I think that if you're able to admit that you fucked up and make things right, you know, apologize to people that you were.
Totally.
Usually, it's a thing that happened for the better. Like at the end, you kind of like found a way to turn it around
I agree with that.
and turn it into something positive. That you were better off, and the people involved were better off because it happened. So there was some pain involved, but at the end, the outcome was positive.
And it's funny you say that as well, because there's people in my life that I'm like, I don't have anything in common with this person, and this thing that just occurred, I'm offended by, or I'm angry about, or I feel was unfair or whatever. But then when you see, this is the thing for me, is when I see people who proactively are trying within the parameters of their personality to better themselves.
Yeah.
And that's an example of it. Say there's somebody who is just by design a cruel person, but you see them consistently checking that and
Checking
saying,
themselves, yeah.
Exactly. It's like at that point you're just like, I've got no problems having this person in my world because within the parameters of something that I may not understand, they're still trying. It's like when you see the victim card, that's when I'm just kind of like, oh, I fucking can't play this anymore.
You know, actually, I was talking I was having a really long talk with my mom the other day, just talking. She lives in Chile, and I see her like once every year and a half or once every 2 years. So, but we talk on the phone twice a month for a couple hours at a time. And I was telling my mom that at least in one of my, like, if I look back at my career with Darkglass, it's kind of like been this super difficult beginning, this super low, then a bit high, then the lowest of the lowest, and then it's kind of like being ups and lows. The trend has been upwards, but you know, up, good and bad times. All like there's like a cycle. But I told my mom that one of the lowest points I hit was when I was telling you when I met this guy, our camera guy, and I was homeless, and I remember then that I learned that, like, man, I'm here not because I'm stupid. I'm not here not because I'm a loser. I'm here not because I had bad luck and somebody fucked me. I'm here because I see myself as a victim of circumstances. And actually I realized that, man, like then, you know, like living in my office and borrowing showers from my friends, you know, twice a week, it was like very humiliating as a person.
Because I was like, I am choosing something different for myself. And in order to do that, there's going to be casualties.
Yeah, of course.
And in order for me to make a change for myself, the only person that's going to be able to implement that is me.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm going to be able to implement that is to never play that, like, poor me thing, right?
Yeah.
And if I do it just knowing that I'm doing it, like, you know what I mean? Like how my wife's not fucking scratching my head, so, okay, you got 5 minutes. Oh, I'm so hard done by. Anyway, where were we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, this is, of course, like, I'm not, like, enlightened or anything, so, of course, like,
me neither, man.
they're like, I'll get fucked with a lot of money sometimes. I'll do a bad deal, and they'll be like, fuck, this guy fucked me, and
Sure.
But as soon as I catch myself, that's the trick. It's like being self-aware to catch yourself. I'm like, you're not a victim. You fucked up. You got into the situation by yourself. You know, nobody pulled a gun to your head and forced you to do this. And then it's just like, okay, make a list what you did wrong, what you should do differently next time, and just move on, man. Like, I mean, for me at least, that was like a very really turning point.
Seems interesting in that sense. It's almost like everybody in our life is a projection of parts of our personality that we're dealing with.
That's interesting. My brother told me that we are crowds.
Yeah.
Like each one of us.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I think maybe like a mushroom experience might have like reminded me that yeah, this guy might have been onto something.
Well, that's it, and it's interesting too because there's people in my life go, man, this person is like confounding, but then you think, well, it's because you
resonate on that.
You're resonating there, and in order to have that not be a part of your experience, you need to resonate differently. And Chris actually told me, he gave me a quote that I just love, and it was Chris Johnson was, you can only cognize that which you are subtler than.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
I love that. So it's like,
yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense. It's very eloquently put, actually.
Yeah, and it's like, and I keep thinking that it's like, well, the more you can refine your resonance, then at that point you're going to be aware of why it's a conundrum still.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, and there's people in my life that I deal with that I'm just thinking to myself, like, why does this keep happening?
Yeah,
you know. And there's one thing to say, well, you have to confront it head on, and you have to, but if you're ill-equipped to confront it, you're going to make a bigger mess of it. This is what I've found as well. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go deal with this right now, but I go into it with the same aggression or fear of confrontation that put me there in the first place.
Yeah,
and then it compounds. You know what I mean? So it's like, in some situations that works, but in others, it's like, well, how do we resolve this, right? I guess that's why I like bass.
Oh well, yeah, beautiful.
Because
I like bass too.
Because the vibrations are fundamental.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, actually. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the, I think, David Hume quote: "The beauty of things exists in the mind which contemplates them." And it's similar also, that kind of like
Can you say it again?
Like, the beauty of things exists in the mind which contemplates them.
Okay.
But actually, I wanted to do a segue to the people around you, because you've made, like, of course, with your life, you seem to have like grown a lot as a person, and in a way you kind of like I think examples like you are awesome, because kind of like that archetype of the genius artist that's like very self-destructive, you know, the Kurt Cobains of the world. In a way, like you're like doing everything from a different perspective now, like being a much centered, healthier person.
Sorry to interrupt. No. I really appreciate it, but I said some of the other day, if I was a genius, I would be on a beach right now. You know what I mean?
You couldn't be, man. You'd be touring.
That's it. I would have figured it out. You know what I mean? I'd be playing a ukulele on a beach somewhere, you know, getting blown by a bunch of fucking, you know, like doing a bunch of Vicodin or something. No, but I appreciate that.
No, but then, well, don't worry, thank you. But my point was kind of like breaking the archetype of like the great successful musician also being self-destructive and having kind of like all these demons. It seems like you've kind of like gotten a hold of yours and sort of kind of like figure out how to deal with everything better in a much more productive and more balanced way. And the interesting thing about it is that your music has changed along with you, but in my opinion, it's a lot better now. Like I think that your music now is the best it's ever been, while you're like the most centered and healthiest that you've ever been, so far as I know.
Thank you, buddy.
Which I think, as a message generally to people, especially creative people who are really vulnerable to mental illness and falling to these traps, it's a great message. It's like,
I appreciate that, and I also think it's important. Just that what underlines that is it's a different generation, man.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it's the same argument that people have with Spotify that are from like a different, you know, because you and I are from a different generation, right? But at the same time, I think that the goals is to be able to like teach from your failure, and it's like the idea is to have everybody get stronger.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like maybe what brought that self-destructive mechanism into the forefront is society is so in love with the idea of gods and martyrs.
Yeah.
And it's just nobody knows. And it's like it seems like the value of a good team and to be a team leader and to be able to like really pull yourself back and understand that, you know, like this last record we just did, the majority of my effort, I mean, musically it's similar to things that have happened in the past, but the majority of my effort just went into learning how to not control people.
Yeah.
And so I spent the whole time frustrated because I'm like, I'm wrong again. I'm wrong again. And it was like, but the outcome of it is now, and it's still works in progress, everything. But
everything, yeah.
the people that I find myself and the people that are in my life too are like, it's a different frequency.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that we were talking like a while ago was that last time you guys played here in Helsinki, we went to our older office and drank beer and tried the new pedals with Beav and everyone. Yeah. And then we met in a bar nearby.
Yeah.
And well, your whole band was there. You were here crashing, I think, but everyone else was there, and everyone seemed so nice. Like everyone was so positive. And for example, for me, this was a couple of years ago. Everybody knew who I was, and your drummer, his name escapes me now, but he was so nice. Like, oh yeah, you're the pedal guy, man. Beef sounds great, and like I felt so good hanging out with those people, and we were talking like, man, there's definitely something to this. Like this wasn't an accident. Like this team of people you have around you didn't just kind of like just came like.
Well, I mean, we all are trying, and I think that's it too. It's like at the end of it, we're trying to we're trying not to add to the pool of shit that is
the world. I mean, life is super difficult, just by itself.
So just as a practical, like Occam's razor. Why would you not want to go in that path, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really appreciate it, man. Those are very nice things to say, but at the same time, I think everybody's getting older, and in the same way as you choose not to be a victim, I think you choose the energy that you want to foster.
Yeah.
And I think that was why, in some cases, when people say, "Why don't you do what you used to do? Get up on stage, tell everybody to go fuck themselves," and, fuck you, fuck everything, fuck it, right? Like, why don't you do that anymore? And I was like, because I didn't realize, well, two things. The process in which I employ to create, I've realized is not the same as, say, a band like Slayer or AC/DC where they have an archetype and they for me...
In a way that they're kind of like forced to fit into that particular role to do their job,
And more power to them. But for me, it's like, I never really decided to do this job, but I think when I was younger, I was really emotionally immature, but the one way that I was able to facilitate a very passionate, artistic mentality was through sound. So music has, in hindsight, turned out to be a vaporizing document of where I am and what it is I'm trying to understand subconsciously. And strapping, at the time, I was so afraid, because when we were kids, we were never allowed to be angry. It was like... And so any sign of anger, I was afraid of. And so when I got older and became angry, I decided to make this music, I think, to reflect it, because I didn't want to confront anybody. So I thought if I was louder and more aggressive and angrier, then all that stuff that I was afraid of would be at arm's length.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening is you're just yelling for it. You're calling it.
And you're attracting more of it.
That's what it was. And then by the end of it, I was surrounded by all the things that not only I was afraid of, but I didn't know how to deal with.
Yeah.
So the biggest step that I think I made personally was to recognize, what is it that you want? Like, we're just doing this creative academy online, and one of the first foundations, I believe, is identifying what you want. And a lot of times I think people are deluded by, well, I want money, I want fame, I want women, I want, I just want to not be a chaos generating mind. I want to be at peace.
That's beautiful. And I guess like part of that also is that I think when you're 18 and starting off, of course, you want the glory and you want the money, and you don't, but you think you do. And at the end, what I found, at least for me, is starting a company. It's like, okay, I thought, man, like, life is shit right now, nothing is working out, but the moment I make $1 million, everything will be perfect.
Totally.
And then if you're lucky, you get there and you're like, man, I feel the same. Maybe I feel worse. Exactly. And then you start realizing, man, like, maybe I didn't want money, maybe I wanted freedom, but in the pursuit of that money to have freedom, I ended up like less free than ever.
Totally.
And I think it takes a lot of like guts and self-awareness. I think self-awareness is super underrated. I don't think enough people talk about the importance of vulnerability and self-awareness, and actually
totally agree.
Like checking yourself and saying, you know what, man, like I'm doing this, I'm not that good. Like someone else should do it for me, and just
Yeah. No, sorry.
No. Like, I guess a band is a bit more obvious because you cannot play all instruments at once. So you can like you're forced to find a great drummer and a good bass player, and well, and for you that's pretty much it. And a good keyboardist, because you play guitar and sing really well. But for me, it was like in the beginning, I was doing everything, like the accounting, marketing, sales. Well, not sales, but marketing, designing everything, building everything, shipping everything, and then every person I hired to take over something that I used to do was like giving away a toy I had. I was like I'm, and of course I believe that, man, being an arrogant 20-year-old, like, oh, I'm the best at this, at everything. Sure. And then you hire like a real marketing person, you're like, man, I suck at this. And then you get for me, it's happened every single time I hire someone new to do something that I used to do.
If you're a man, you have to like the color blue and mixed martial arts. And, what I mean? It's
and
like,
deadlift and be big and
that's it.
Did you cry? What did you cry? What the fuck?
What, you pussy? That makes you weak, right?
And
I think that's the thing, is it's like vulnerability is key, but even in the same sense, even on the new record, it's like, I hired Nolly to do the mix and the engineering.
Funny enough, he told me a year ago in the London Bass Show, exactly a year ago to the week. He told me that, and yeah.
But again, why did I hire him? Because he's fucking better at it than I am.
Yeah.
But I spent so many years, like, convinced that in order
only
for
you
me,
could do it.
only I could do it. And then when I finally did work with somebody who was better, I was just like, oh God, that's so relieving. Because all of a sudden I get a snare sound back and I'm like, oh, that sounds great. As opposed to me pissing around with like plugins, and because I never learned, right? So anybody who I work with, you're always going to be working with. But at the same time, I beat my head against the wall thinking that for whatever reason, because Daddy didn't play catch with me enough, or whatever it was, that I had to make not only the song, but I had to make the snare drum sound just as good as Andy Sneap or whatever, right?
Of course, And
then when I realized that, dude, I've been listening to a click track burrow into 3.5K in my ear for the past 20 years.
Oh, sounds lovely,
it's like, I go to bed at night and it sounds like someone's frying bacon and someone's blowing a whistle on the other side of the room, right? It's like, why don't you... It's interesting we were talking about this. Why don't you offshore that to somebody who's better than you, and then your team becomes a pillar of strength.
And that's the thing, like, kind of like you get a lot of freedom and space back that you can use to contemplate, enjoy your life, or be more creative. Usually they go together. I find like the more I take time to go for walks and or like meditate, like 100%. And it's funny, like kind of like when something's not working in the office, it's like oh, like I'm not doing enough, so you're working only 12 hours. Maybe if you do 16, you pussy, things would be better. And sometimes it's the opposite. Like, dude, like actually work 8 or 10 hours instead of 16. And usually just like kind of just having that headspace.
Beav tends to watch me. He's always just like, dude, you need to slow down.
That's amazing. But it's amazing that you have people like that, though, that can tell you, like, dude, like.
Well, we talk about a team, man. It's like the idea of having a strong team together, I think, requires everybody's strengths and weaknesses balancing it out, because that way, if everybody's like in their brain, you're going to have such a deficit in terms of the practical, logical part of your work, right? But if you've got people who maybe aren't as
creative but
are very practical,
execute. I'm reading a book now called The Innovator's DNA, and it's a great book. The name sounds kind of like really like I don't know, like marketing bullshit, but actually what the book talks about is kind of like the most and it's a business book, so of course it's business oriented, and they said the most innovative and successful teams in business usually have both. They have people who are extremely creative and innovative, like Steve Jobs, but then those people also partner up with people who are extremely organized and really good at executing.
And the problems there all of a sudden become interpersonal. Because you perceive your environment. Some of us perceive it as circles and others perceive it as squares, and never the twain shall meet, right?
But the thing is realizing that maybe to get what you want, you need both.
And you have to compromise.
You have to compromise. But you know what? I think, at least for me, I find that compromising it's easy as long as there's appreciation for what the other person do.
That's a good point.
Because if the culture of the team or the company or the band or whatever, if the culture is not right, like teams don't have cultures. Teams are cultures.
Sure.
Like your band is a culture. Whether you
Sure.
are aware or not, or whether you want it or
Oh
not.
no, yeah, very much.
And if the culture is basically based on a lot of mutual respect and admiration and appreciation, making those compromises becomes really easy because you trust that, okay, at this thing they're better, you know. And
yeah, I agree. I think there's, however, with each personality type comes certain levels of self-awareness too, and I think that there's sometimes where I've felt myself angry at people for not being aware of things, and then ultimately I find that my reason for being angry with them is because they're not perceiving their environment like I do.
Yeah.
Which is counterproductive as a boss too, because I'm thinking, well, I remember, you know, as a practical example, something happened, and I'm thinking, how can you not recognize how that affected everybody? And then in my mind, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, you're ignorant, or you get rid of judgment, you're careless. That's a better word. And then after a while, you realize they had no idea.
Yeah, they weren't even aware of it.
No idea. And then all of a sudden, you're passive aggressive in my case towards them, and by the end of it, everybody's fucking confused. We gotta do the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
It's
been really great, Doug.
Man, thank you so much for your time, and it was a blast.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah.